So last week we looked at transitions in the life of Joseph and difficulties he faced. And like him, eventually, now for Joseph it took like 20 years for him to realize God was in it through the entire time. But we can use that to understand God is with us even when times seem difficult and even when we feel alone. There are other times in our lives that aren't as traumatic, not transitions, but they're just hard. They're exhausting. And it might be physically exhausting. It might be emotionally exhausting. And we may feel alone, or if we're introverts, we don't feel alone enough because we're just so tired. But we feel like, boy, I need a break. I'm just at the end of my rope. I don't have any more gas. I'm running on fumes. And just like that transitions that Joseph went through, we also go through times where life is just a grind, okay? It's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily traumatic. It's just difficult because you don't have much energy left. And you just need to catch your breath. Looking back at our career in missions, there were lots of days like that. Sometimes they were even weeks. I remember our first few months in China. We went after we had been married only 1 year. We didn't even know each other. And we're trying to learn a new language, a new culture, new food, new smells. Now, let me tell you about the smells in China back in 1984, okay? Public bathrooms were extremely easy to find. You could smell them from about half a block away, okay? So combined with that kind of hygiene, new foods, we were in the spiciest food in the world, Sichuan province. So I got dysentery. I weigh 190 pounds. Imagine me at 120 pounds. So that's what I was. It was great. I could pretend I was a skeleton. And our class was on the 8th floor. 2 or 3 times a day we had to climb those stairs. It was physically exhausting. But sometimes life is just like that. It's ministry. We knew we were exactly where God wanted us. There was no question about that. We were happy to be there. But that didn't necessarily make it easy. Our first few months in Romania, we arrived in Romania in 1996. Our oldest was 3. Our youngest was 18 months. Imagine traveling for about 24 hours with 2 boys that aged. And then landing and trying to find a place to stay, learning the language, new food again, new smells, outhouses, you name it. It was physically exhausting. Again, we knew that was where God wanted us, exactly where God wanted us. We were happy to be there, but that doesn't always make it easy. After we were in Romania for several years, you start to get the language down. You kind of get in your groove, okay? You kind of understand what's going on around you a little bit, not totally. But you can speak and you can understand, and you can order food in the restaurant. And the milestone for missionaries is being able to order pizza on the phone. That sounds silly, but talking to people on the phone is not the same as talking to them in person when you can see their lips and expression and whatnot. So being able to do that was great. I also learned how to drive. Now, you think, well, wait a minute. You knew how to drive when you went to Romania, right? Well, yeah, but that's driving here. That's not driving there. They have a driver's manual. It's really just a list of suggestions. Because you can pass from any lane, on any hill, on any curve. You can turn left from the right lane, right from the left lane, whatever it is. Okay. So you had to learn how to drive. One of them, our prayer letter that got the most response was titled, "Clobbered by a Bimbo." Because the taxi name was Bimbo, and I got T-boned by a taxi when I was driving my car, because I did what I thought I was supposed to do, and wham, he smashed right into me. Life was difficult. It was exhausting, emotionally in many ways, and physically in many ways. But again, we knew that was where God wanted us. It's what he wanted us to do. In 2010, I started flying back and forth from Romania to a little town, Rutherfordton, Union Mills, even a tinier town here in North Carolina, this side of Asheville, to start training new missionaries going out. It was like a dream. I had to pinch myself. All my life, I had wanted to teach. I taught Bible for years. Now I was teaching something even more practical, multiplying ourselves by training young people how to learn a culture, how to learn a language, how to share the gospel in a different context, life on the mission field. I loved it. But flying back and forth 4 times a year from Europe to North Carolina was exhausting. Plus, we had a very small teaching staff at the time. I was the one who carried all the culture classes, which meant I had to read all the papers. So it was a very grueling 4 to 5 weeks, 4 times a year, flying back and forth. On top of that, with a heart condition and jet lag and all that kind of stuff. But again, it was exhausting, but we knew, and I knew, that's where God wanted us. Life is like that. It can be exhausting. You can have tough times. It's not wrong times. It's what you're supposed to be doing, but it's just tiring. You have smooth times when the breeze is behind your back, and there's other times where the breeze dies down and you have to grab the oars and row as hard as you can. Have you ever been in a situation where you just finished a tough period of ministry? Maybe it was a short-term mission trip. How many people have been on a short-term mission trip, by the way? Off anywhere. It's great. It's fantastic, but it can be exhausting, can't it? Or volunteering here at church. Or my great fear is teaching little kids in a Sunday school class. I was the youngest in my family. I don't understand little kids. We had some. I kind of understood them, but, that's different. Give me an audience of 1,000 people, I'm relaxed. Give me an audience of 4 preschoolers, and I am in a total panic because I don't know what to do with them, okay? That can be exhausting. Or ministry outside these 4 walls, where in some sense, real ministry actually takes place. Whether your neighbors, your family, helping someone through a tough time, whatever it is, you feel good about what you're doing or what you've done, but at the same time, you need to take a break. You need to catch your breath. You can't run 24/7. Maybe when you're young, you can stay up all night. But when you get older, you can't run 24 hours. And we really can't run 7 days a week. That's why God gave us the 7th day to rest. We can't do that. The disciples felt that way very early in their ministry. They just had a great time of ministry, a fantastic time. It was actually their first missionary trip when they went out. They were sent out. But they come back, they're excited, it's fantastic, it was an amazing time, but they're exhausted. I want you to turn to Mark chapter 6. We're going to look at a passage that you have heard probably hundreds of times. And I bet the first time you heard it, you couldn't even read yet, because it's a great story for little kids. And it's the feeding of the 5,000. Remember there was a little boy. He had 5 loaves of barley, 5 loaves of bread, and 2 little fish. And Jesus took that, and he fed 5,000 people. I want to look at it from a different perspective, though. It's often taught and preached from different perspectives, sometimes from the little boy. And we like that story for little kids because what? It teaches them how to share, right? You're supposed to share your fish and share your bread, okay? But it's also taught in the sense that God can use even little people, even people who don't have a name, who seem insignificant, and yet God can do something with them. Sometimes Jesus is the focus. It's from his perspective. We look at his generosity, especially his compassion on the crowds, and we're supposed to be like that. Often we look at it from our perspective. We see, well, God can feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 little fish. God can provide for me, and he can. There are secular interpretations of it. I really enjoy this. People who don't believe the Bible, and yet they try to interpret the Bible, I came across this. I'll have to read it to you. This is from a secular perspective, denying miracles. He says the feeding of the 5,000 was not a miracle at all. It was simply a miracle of human kindness. Jesus doesn't miraculously multiply 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed 5,000 people. Rather, his teaching about loving one's neighbor prompts everyone to share with what they had. Yeah, okay, I don't like that. I came across another one. I thought this was even dumber, okay? This idea is everybody had their lunch in their jacket, but they're looking around, and they're not going to share, and they want to keep it, so they're hiding it to themselves. When finally they see the little boy, and he's so generous, It moves 5,000 people to be generous with the food they're hiding in their pockets to get it out and start eating. Now, I think that's more of a miracle to take 5,000 people with food in their pocket who are starving and not eating, okay? So that's a different perspective. But I want to look at it from the perspective of the missionaries, the disciples themselves, from their perspective. Often in these stories or in these parables that Jesus teaches, the disciples are the key point, or at least a very key point. Because often what is going on is Jesus is talking to the multitudes, but he's indirectly talking to the disciples, or the Pharisees sometimes, or all three sometimes. So the disciples often play a key role in these stories, but we don't happen to notice it because it's often just little comments that are made. And we miss those comments, and we go on to the story itself. If you look in Mark chapter 6, verse 31, Jesus says to his disciples, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." That was the intention of crossing the Sea of Galilee. That was the point of getting to the other side because the disciples were exhausted and they needed a break. So let's look at it from their perspective, the disciples. But I also want to look at it from a missionary's perspective. Now you're saying, okay, Andy's a missionary. Those guys can pull a missionary story out of anywhere in the Bible. Okay. Sometimes we can. Sometimes even when it's not there. Okay. This time it is there. Okay. What is a missionary? Basic definition, it's one who's sent on a mission. In a religious sense, it's someone who's sent to share the beliefs of that particular religion, to share their faith. A Christian missionary is a little bit more specific. A Christian missionary is one who's called by God and then sent out to share the faith. A more technical term we use in our circles is someone who crosses cultures to do that, okay? But a missionary is a Christian missionary is someone who's called and sent out, okay? Look at Mark chapter 6, verse 7. It says, "Then Jesus calling," okay, so he's calling somebody, "calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2. That is what happened just before the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus had sent them out on a missionary trip, on a mission. He called them and sent them out. They're missionaries. And so the story we know of as the feeding of the 5,000 was supposed to be the disciples, those first missionaries, first furlough. You know what furlough is, right? A furlough is when you take a break from what you're doing to get some rest, to recharge. It's a military term. It's used in missions. In the old days, when you went on a ship, you went for years, you came back maybe for a year or two because often you had malaria or you had to have a break. Nowadays, furloughs tend to be shorter because transportation's easy, medicine's more available. It's not always such for a physical break, but sometimes you just need a break out of the culture and language and field and come back. And that is what the disciples were supposed to be doing. Jesus had said, "Come with me by ourselves to a quiet place to get some rest." And they crossed the Sea of Galilee. Now, this has nothing to do with the sermon, but I think it's fun because I like trivia. When I was putting this together, does anyone know what else the Sea of Galilee was called? What's another name for the Sea of Galilee? Sea of Tiberias. Did you know that Tiberias means belly button? That has nothing to do with the sermon, and I probably shouldn't have said it because an hour from now, that's the only thing you're going to remember. Okay. So they get in their boats, they cross the lake of belly button, and they get to the other side, and they're supposed to take this break, this furlough, because they needed some rest. They're first-term missionaries, okay? They had been sent out in Mark 6, 7 through 12 on their first term, and it was a doozy, okay? Calling the 12 to him, he sent them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over evil spirits. He goes on in 8 through 11. He gives them very specific instructions. Okay, this is the trip, their missionary trip they took just before the feeding of the 5,000. He says, take nothing. First instruction. Now, I could stop right there because that kind of sums up going on the mission field with the cost of transportation and shipping. Often missionaries take what they can take in just a couple suitcases. But he says, don't even take your suitcase. He says, no bag, no bread, no money. And the disciples were probably thinking, what am I getting myself into? How am I supposed to do something with no bread, no bag, no money, no nothing? And then Jesus calms their fears, sending them out, and he says to them, whenever you enter a house, stay there. Now, us missionaries have that down pat. We call that mooching, okay? Mooching. And nothing goes faster than a free place to stay among missionaries. In fact, we're mooching in Rod's house right now, okay? So I understand this, okay? So that's great, yeah, okay, just mooch off people, okay? So they had a very busy first term. In fact, they were given very specific instructions in Matthew 10. When you look at the Gospels, you need to look at all 4, because often the stories are repeated. In Matthew 10, it goes into even more detail, not just about what they're supposed to take, but what they're supposed to do. It says in Matthew 10:7, as you go, preach this message, that the kingdom of heaven is near. Okay, we can do that. Oh, and while you're at it, heal the sick, raise the dead, heal those with leprosy, and drive out some demons. And the disciples are going, oh yeah? That sounds kind of heavy duty, doesn't it, Jesus? And it's no small assignment. Their mission board, Jesus, has some pretty high requirements for them. But then, on top of that, he tells them in 10:17 and 10:22, oh, by the way, while you're out there doing all these impossible things, all men will hate you. Oh, great. That sounds like fun. And then he goes on in verse 17, he says, not only that, they're going to hand you over to the local authorities to flog you. That means whip you. Oh, great. They're going to hate me. They're going to whip me. And then he says, that's okay. Verse 23, when you're persecuted, that's okay. Just flee to another place. Wow, oh, great. They're really starting to think about their impossible task, raise the dead, all these things. But at the same time, they're going to be hated, flogged, and chased from town to town. If I was one of the disciples, I would be questioning my call to missions right there. Okay? And I would probably be rethinking ministry in general. Okay? This is what it means to do ministry, but they didn't flinch. They took up the challenge. Back in Mark chapter 6, it says, verse 12, they went out and preached that people should repent. They did it. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them. Wow. They did it. They accomplished the task set before them. It had been a very fruitful first missionary term. And now, like all missionaries do, they had come back and they were reporting to their supporter. Okay, their supporter in this case was just Jesus. Okay, didn't have a lot of churches to go to. Churches didn't exist yet. Okay, so they're reporting to Jesus. In 6:30, it says, the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Remember, there's 12 disciples, 2 by 2, that 6 different teams had gone out. This took a while. And you can imagine the excitement they had. It was a fantastic time. They had never done this before. It was amazing. They had seen God work through them. It was an extremely emotional high. Their very first time, and they saw God working right through them. You couldn't ask for a better first term. Talk about great prayer letters. They had it, okay? But I'm sure they were dead beat tired. In fact, they were so tired, that's why Jesus said, let's get in the boat, cross the lake. I'm not going to say the name of the lake, because then you'll just remember that, okay? And let's get some rest. Because they needed a furlough. One little side note, by the way, it tells us in Matthew 14 that Jesus himself wanted to cross the lake and get some rest. It says in Matthew 14:13, Jesus himself, when Jesus heard what had happened to John the Baptist, he had been beheaded, his cousin, by the way, he withdrew by a boat privately with his disciples to a solitary place. That was the point of crossing the sea. Jesus wanted to get away to grieve. The disciples wanted to get away to rest. They wanted more than just some furlough time. They wanted some furlough time. Okay? They're probably thinking, let's grill some burgers on the beach. Let's take a snooze by the campfire. Let's get some rest. Verse 32, what happens? But many who saw them leaving, okay, remember they're trying to sneak away in the boat, recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns. Okay, they're crossing a lake that takes about 2 hours to row across. Okay, it's a big lake. And they're running along the shore. I can imagine the disciples going, where are all those people going? And then when they land, what happens? 5,000 people are waiting for them. Well, so much for the break. So much for some rest. And then Jesus began teaching them many, notice it says many things, okay? It was just not a few encouraging words to the crowd. He went into a long sermon. Now, put yourself in the perspective of the disciples. They had just been told, let's cross the lake and get some rest by ourselves, quiet, take a break. They see 5,000 people running ahead of them. What does Jesus do? He doesn't send them away. He's moved by compassion, and he starts teaching. And he goes into this long sermon, and you can imagine 12 disciples. Okay, these are guys, okay? In fact, they're not just tired. It says they hadn't even eaten yet, okay? They're sitting off to the side, maybe found some shade. They got their arms crossed. So much for a break. When guys get hungry, that's a problem, okay? We get kind of irrational, and we get grumpy. And talk about being hungry and angry at the same time, that's called hangry, by the way. You know, us guys get that. And I can imagine those disciples thinking, this sermon's going kind of long. Imagine the line at Chick-fil-A. We're not even going to get in. And you can just imagine their frustration, actually, with what's taken place. They had come off this wonderful high, this great trip. They had told Jesus all about it. Let's take a break. And what happens? It's late in the day. They hadn't had their lunch yet. They hadn't had their supper yet. And their reaction comes out in verses 35 and 36. And again, it's easy to gloss over this. But listen to what the disciples say to Jesus. This is a remote place, and it's already very late. Send the people away. What are they saying? We want some break. We want to rest. Isn't that what you told us we were going to get? Send the people away so that they can go to their surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. By the way, that tells you that they didn't have food hidden in their cloaks, okay, in their jackets. They didn't have anything to eat. Now, maybe the disciples were concerned about the multitudes. I think they were just hungry and grumpy. Okay. Would you just send them away? Okay. Then Jesus answered them in verse 37, why don't you feed them? What? 5,000 people? How in the world? And one of them says, that would take 8 months' wages to feed 5,000 people. How in the world are we supposed to do that? They didn't say this, but they're probably thinking, Jesus, I think you're crazy. Okay, something's going on here. Okay. Now, you would think that they remembered what they had just done. Healed the sick. Brought people to Christ. Amazing things. Casted out demons. But when you take a guy who's tired and hungry, his brain is not working, okay? They should have realized we had just done miracles. Oh, yeah, we can feed 5,000. But they're hungry, they're tired, and they're puzzled. How in the world can we possibly do that? 5,000 people, hungry and tired. So what can we learn from this passage this morning? Okay, we looked at it from a different perspective, and it's there. The disciples were missionaries. The point of crossing the lake was for them to get a rest, which they did not get. One thing we can learn from this is maybe it's not a good idea to call your pastor first thing Monday morning when he's exhausted. Okay, so maybe that's not the best time. But seriously, we do need rest. That's why the Sabbath was created. And I don't want you walking away this morning saying, Andy says we need to burn out for Christ. Okay, that Christians don't need breaks. That's not the point of this passage. In fact, I'd rather have you remember just it was like belly button than Andy saying you don't need breaks at all. But sometimes, God asks us to do a little bit more. When we're tired, we're at the end of our rope, we don't know what to do, we don't have any strength left, and we don't think we could possibly do it because we don't have any more fuel left in our gas tank. That's when God sometimes steps in and multiplies the bread and the fish through us. Have you ever been in a difficult situation where you thought, there is no way I can get through this? I'm just too tired, whether emotionally or physically. I can't possibly do it. Or maybe the situation's not just difficult, it's impossible. And God's asking you to do the impossible, to feed 5,000 people when you don't have any food and you're tired and you're hungry. Matthew 19:26 said, Jesus looked at them and said, with man this is impossible. Different context, talking about being saved. But he says, but with God, all things are possible. What can we learn from this passage? When we're the weakest, that is when God is strongest. When we know we can't do it, and we have to fully depend on Him to do it, that's when God really works. Isaiah chapter 40 says, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He, God, will not grow tired or weary, and His understanding no one can fathom. Feed 5,000 people. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. Are you feeling weary and weak today? Whatever it is. Whether it's difficulties with family, with relatives, with neighbors, with children, illness, sickness, whatever it is, and you feel like you're at the end of your rope. Isaiah tells us those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Again, I'm not saying we don't need breaks. I'm not saying we shouldn't take time to rest. When I was in college, where Rod and I went, and Pam went, and Gail went, they used to say, you need to burn out for Christ. You need to not just burn the candle at one end, burn the candle at both ends. And they pushed and pushed and pushed. And a lot of people fell out of ministry because we're not made to do that. But there are times when we need to be sensitive because God is saying, I know you're tired. I know you feel like you can't make it. But like I was with Joseph, I'm here with you now. And I will give you my strength to help you get through. He wants to display His power in our lives. And the best time to do that is when we realize we have no power of our own. When we have nothing left to give. Ephesians 3, chapter 3, verse 20 says, now to Him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to His power, not our power. This is a favorite passage of mine. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7 says, But we have this treasure, talking about the gospel. We have this treasure in jars of clay, this fragile thing, to show that this all-surpassing power is from who? From God and not from us. When we have nothing left to give, he steps in if we let him and we listen to him to give us the power to accomplish the task. What can God do? He can take 5 plus 2 and make 5,000 out of it. Pretty amazing. He can take a lot, make a lot out of a little. He can take a little boy and he can turn nobodies into somebodies to accomplish anything with nothing. That's our God. When we are weakest, he is strongest. When our resources are at their lowest, God is just getting started. So hang in there. And only God can take a group of 12 tired, hungry, grumpy guys and work a miracle through them. And only God can take us when we are weary and weak and we have nothing left to give, no strength left. He can help us soar on wings like eagles. Are you at the end of your rope? Are you at the end of your rope? What I want you to do is remember who's holding on to the other end. Like we sang a little while ago, the one holding to the other end is the one who can move mountains. What looks to us like a mountain, we can't possibly get over it or up it or around it, God can step in and move it. Or he can ask you to go over it. But when he does, he's right there alongside you and will give you the strength to do it. God can move mountains. God can do anything through us if we just let him. Because it's his power that does it,